So, quick introduction. So my name is Reheen. I'm the co-founder of Digital Crew, and I'm here with Mason. Hey, Mason.
Thank you, Reheen. Mason Lin, co-founder CEO of Pockyt. Yeah, really excited to be here. And like you mentioned, Reheen, like you mentioned earlier, this is entirely something that's new. So we do expect to have a conversations. This is also a learning process for me as we getting deeper of the metaverse.
Yeah, let's get started. So I'll just jump into the next slide. So just a quick introduction further, Mason and I have been serial entrepreneurs. We've been doing this for a number of years, and we've known each other for the last 4 years. We've been doing business for a while. And during our recent conversations, we were like, hey, what's trending in the market? What's actually happening? What's exciting stuff that gets connected? Because we both come in from Asia, one thing that we have been really geared towards has been towards super apps, and we have been using it. We have been getting our clients onto it, and there's been a lot of fun stuff that we've been doing on super apps. But as we have progressed over the years, we've also seen the rise of Metaverse. Today, we're going to talk more about the Metaverse, and we're not going to talk about the NFT space. I think the NFT space is going through a challenging time right now. So we'll talk more about on how Metaverse is exploding. How can there be a usage about Metaverse and with super apps, and then especially for brands in the North American region where they're still trying to figure out what a super app is, but they're very keen towards a Metaverse. I think that's where the conversation is, where we're trying to head. So let's just jump in and let's just have a chat about that. So at a very high level, what we're going to do is just talk about 4 key topics. Essentially, we want to talk about the Asian e-commerce market. And the reason why we want to talk about it is because I think, and from our experience and being in the region, is it's one of the fastest growing spaces, and a lot of things are unknown in the North American side of the world. So we wanted to bring people to a realization of what is actually moving on in the Asian. In fact, from our research and what we'll show you in the next few slides, you'll see that there are a lot more people who are engaged on this side. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the Metaverse, to cover things around super apps, and then the interesting thing around mini programs, which I think is seeing a lot of rise, especially in China. So we'll give it a bit of thoughts. So Asian e-commerce. So what is the Asian e-commerce market all about? So the first thing we have to realize is it's not a small market. It's not something that is not growing fast enough. It's actually having explosive growth. Just in 2022, we're going to expect it's going to be around $2 trillion worth of share. And when we talk about this, you also have to think about the size of the market that we're looking at. You're almost looking at connecting to 4 billion people. And the best part about this is not everybody speaks English as the first language. So there is this huge opportunity for global brands to come in and say, how do I get a piece of this pie? But how do I also localize my message? If you think about regions like Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, these are also seeing an immense growth. But not everybody out there starts a conversation in English. Not everybody jumps onto an Amazon first to begin with. Yes, there is Facebook prevalent, but there is WhatsApp, but so is, there is Line, there is Viber, there is Kakao Talk, and then there is also WhatsApp, which has seen immense growth. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. But then, of course, there's the big giant in all of this, which is China. And the best part about China is all of the apps that I mentioned don't work in there. They have their own version of the apps. They have their own way of dealing with it. I think Mason can talk a little bit more about China. I think because he's from the region, he can talk to me about the different stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, also to give you a bit of my background. So I was born in China. I came to the US as a first generation immigrant when I was 13. After college, I moved back to China, created 2 companies over there. It was a part of that was so-called cashless revolution, right? So have firsthand witnessed this whole transition for people how they transact, how they purchase, e-commerce, and how they be paying for things in a brick and mortar environment. So after those 2 companies, I just realized that this similar trend definitely gonna pick up in the Western world. So I moved back, but essentially to answer your question, Reheen, I think China is definitely a completely different animal, right? People transact differently. People, purchase differently. Just to give you an example, right now, I think it's also relevant when it comes to metaverse or super app and that sort of thing. Right now, social commerce or commerce within the super app already accounts for about 25% of the entire e-com. And like you mentioned, this is already a huge juggernaut. And that 25% is relatively the same size of a US e-commerce market in general. So this is obviously a huge market. People over there transact differently. They purchase with a different, flow. The question is, how do we break into that market, right? So that's definitely an interesting topic to discuss.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I mean, it's fascinating having done and lived in China and also doing business in China that we see it completely different to what we see. Like, in the US, it seems a bit prehistoric when we still go around using checks versus when we are in China where everything is QR code. I know the only positive that I would say that's happened in the last 2 years of COVID has been actually the usage of QR codes across the world. It was something which was unheard of a couple of years ago. It was a bit challenging to explain to people what a QR code is and how do you use it.
Yeah, 100%. Interestingly, the cashless revolution and this entire e-commerce shift in China also happened after SARS, pandemic. It definitely will have a huge boost to how people will be willing to shop, right? People will be, spending time and purchasing in an environment that they can trust. And, COVID, it push people to e-commerce. And then, speaking to it from payments perspective, like Pockyt, I think this is not about, if super app or metaverse or, wallet transactions will be coming in to replace anything, but more of an alternative. And then I actually get asked a lot of these questions like, why is American such a late adopter of QR, late adopter of super app and, metaverse? I think it's always about competition, right? So in the US, I think, yes, people are still using checks. Yes, people are using cards, but at the end of the day, those, methods work. And, they are being established by, gazillion dollar company. So for new technology to come in and have a sort of market share, and they have to compete with some of the biggest guys, some of the biggest company on the planet. But on the flip side, China, when they first introduced QR, they essentially have no competition. And QR and wallets are being owned by, the biggest e-com companies over there, biggest social media company over there. So naturally, they have less competition. They have less resistance from the consumer. It's an easier of adoption across border. But here, I think, definitely, like you mentioned, Reheen, COVID definitely give it a huge boost. Pockyt also now support PayPal, Venmo, Cash App type of QR wallet payments. Definitely, I don't think without COVID, they will be this popular, and it's definitely giving them a lot of motivation to go out and provide this alternative to the broader market.
Yeah, I agree. And even in a market like India, you are seeing a lot of people jumping onto the whole QR code bandwagon and UPI taking over. I think because the entire Asian region has a lot of younger people, they are more adaptive to taking on newer technologies. They're accepting it faster than the rest of the world. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of opportunity. But again, coming back to the fact that this is where there is an immense amount of growth that is happening. So I think that's where we're going to talk more about it. Moving on, what we want to talk about is, if you think about the Asian market, it's booming, right? You have such a young population, predominantly under the age of 30, even I would say, as young as like 25, you have this huge couple of 100 million people that you could target. And these people are very interested in not only what is trending, but also what is upcoming. We have seen, and of course, in the last few weeks, we've seen the decline of crypto, but we have also seen an explosion of growth in the crypto space, especially in the Southeast Asian market, and even in markets like China, where it was even banned, but we still had a lot of people from China using the crypto space. Now, I know that it's gone through a bit of a decline in the last couple of weeks, but it doesn't mean that it's dead. And I think what more and more people are getting into is they want technologies which don't have barriers for them. And if you think about two things that have actually a lot of people are working on, and I think this is where there is an interjection of super apps coming in, has been the logistics and payments. I think the last mile logistics has been incredibly great in Southeast Asia as well as in China. Think about it, you could order something and you could get it delivered to you within an hour. Now, a lot of things are moving towards 10 minutes. So you place an order and you could get things delivered to you within 10 minutes. And we're not just talking about food. You could even order groceries. And you have this whole last mile logistics being worked out where everything is delivered to you so quickly. And the best part about it is that you are not trying to do too many things by jumping into too many hoops and apps. You're just doing everything seamlessly in one place. And I think more and more people are transacting digitally. So there's this whole, ecosystem that is being built up, which is for the consumer, which is essentially want something very quick, very easy, and very efficiently. So there's this whole opportunity. I know 10 minutes sounds bizarre, but it is actually already happening. And even in markets like, Australia, India, China, last mile logistics is incredibly popular. And I think that's where there's a lot of opportunity. And so is in the payment space. You want the ability for people to pay. And the thing that has also seen an incredible growth is being the buy now, pay later in the payments area. So, people are buying, but then there are so many companies who are giving them the opportunity to buy it very quickly and then not pay for it fully in one go. You can spread out the payments. And that has seen, again, a huge rise. So I think as we move forward in the next few years, we'll see that it's going to get more and more hyper growth areas. And of course, not everybody's going to survive, but that doesn't mean that people are going to shift the way that they transact and they behave. So what is actually trending? I mean, if you talk about categories, so clothing and fashion is absolutely big. So is accessories, consumer electronics. Now, to give an example, because, I've come from India, but then I've also lived in other parts of the world, including right now in Australia. Electronics is something that has seen a huge growth. And the reason for that is the price points have dropped incredibly. Like if you think about in the Asian markets, the most basic mobile phone might start from like $100. And then for every $20 price point to a $30 price point, you get a new phone. And as you keep on moving and moving further, you see that, the features tend to get better. So a lot of people, think that Apple is the icon and you always need to buy it. But the fact of the Apple is, and especially in Asia, most of the people might want to buy out the device. They don't lease out a device. They don't have a contract per se. So in that, an Apple does not have a huge market share. We're looking at less than a 10% market share, which means that restricts the number of people using iOS. But the Android has seen an explosive growth because at every price point, you have people coming in which has a different mobile or a different laptop. Like if you look at companies like Xiaomi coming out of China, they not only sell you a mobile phone, but they'll also sell you a vacuum cleaner. They'll also sell you a TV. They'll sell you a smartphone. They'll send you a smart watch. And the price points are so low that you'll be like, why am I paying so much more for an Apple Watch when I could get a Xiaomi watch, which pretty much does the same thing for $40. So I think that's where a lot has started to shift. And video games. Let's not even talk about video games. I mean, kids out there are just spending whole days on whole weeks. There are internet cafes that still exist where people just go to play games. And then books, but not only just physical books, but also digital books. Content. There's been another explosive growth of OTT platforms. There is so many OTT platforms to choose from and so much content being produced, not just on OTT, but also on the likes of YouTube. You have people, if we talk about China, then there's so much stuff happening on Aichi, on Yoku, but then also, in countries like Philippines, they have their own OTT platform, which only produces information in local languages. The same in India, you could literally choose from like 30 to 40 different options of OTT, and it covers you a lot of basic, and prices could start as low as like $2 a month. to something like $20 to $30, depending upon what kind of content you go in for. And then of course, cosmetics and health and body is something that has been prevalent. So what do you think about this, Mason? Where do you see more opportunities coming in?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we are a payments platform, and 85% of our payment volume come from cross-border transactions. And I can definitely see some of that top categories from our perspective, like video games that you mentioned. I think it's humongous market. While I think Asians in general, they play the most video games on the planet. So from our perspective, gaming, computer gaming would definitely be a top category. And cosmetic and body care, I think it's historically this is something that it's being seen with a lot of high demand. Like you mentioned, a lot of consumers in Asia, they tend to be younger. There's huge populations. I think they're going after cosmetic and beauty products, clothing and consumer goods and consumer electronic definitely are the next one in the tier. But yeah, I think right now we are seeing our merchants with the biggest success would be digital goods space, and gaming, and also consumer product like cosmetics.
Yeah, I agree on that. And I think when we talk about gaming, I think it leads well into when we talk about metaverse. So let's just move on. So one thing which we talk about is marketplace versus D2C. With the D2C, of course, there are people who are jumping in and launching their own brands, but e-commerce platforms per se have also seen a huge amount of growth, especially the platforms like Amazon. But then you also have the likes of Lazada, Shopee in Southeast Asia. You have the Paytm Mall, the Flipkart, the Snapdeal in India. You have in China, you have the Taobao, you have Tmall, you have JD. So in Japan, you have Rakuten. Going to Korea, you have Coupang. So a lot of people, the reason why they go into marketplaces is because of the ability to be able to buy from different vendors, but also to compare and to see what's trending. But then as more and more brands are getting in there, they also realize that it would also make sense for them to be able to buy and get access to the consumer directly through social. And that's where social commerce has started to take into place. So there is this huge shift that is coming in. So of course, people are going in, but it's not the old school way of I build a website and then I do my SEO and I'm pay-per-click, and then I might think about, do I need to be on a marketplace? I think a lot of brands, especially in Asia, they're playing on both fronts and they're playing it really well. And they're seeing huge opportunities. But where a lot of people are also now seeing transactions coming in is through social commerce. Of course, you can use Instagram to buy things, but if you think about a country like India, where now it's the only place where you can also send money and receive money on WhatsApp. So you could open up your own company's business account, provide people, products and services, and then ask them to pay you directly through WhatsApp. So if you just combine the power of WhatsApp, which has like 400 million users in a market like India, you have a huge opportunity without actually investing heavily on trying to build out a web and a digital presence on a website or even on a marketplace. You can go in and provide a more personalized service through a social commerce play. And I think a lot of brands are realizing that. Even the bigger brands, like, if you think about like Nike and Adidas, they are jumping in where the range of the products is huge because they have to cater to such a diverse audience, but also an audience which is always demanding for new things. And they want a value add product at a very good price point. So I think, people will always go out there and compare, and more people are buying digitally because they find it easier, they find it faster, and the ability to have everything. But that does not mean to say that, retail bricks and mortar stores are dead. It's growing, but online still represents less than, 10% in some markets. In some markets, it's a bit higher, but it's not going to be like, digital is going to take over completely offline. But what people do is they try and price compare in both instances, and then they would visit the malls, and then they would buy some things which are on impulse, but maybe a larger purchase, they would do a lot of research on the online front.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's not being stuck with one way or another. I think future of e-commerce in general is about providing that alternative to the consumer. And for the first time, you see how consumer demand drive not only technologies in the space, but also like how they will be purchasing. So the rise of buy now, pay later, it's also about targeting that younger demographic and enabling them with credit, enabling them with new sort of payment options. And this is exactly the same. If you are a merchant, if you are a retailer, you just cannot stick with only one of the other. If you want to sell to Asia, where say in China, roughly about 55% of that entire commerce is happening online, right? You have to think about how do you sort of gear up to be able to sell through e-commerce. And to share with you an interesting stat, right? American in the United States, in general, this is only about 11% of American merchants selling globally, and that 11% probably 10% of that is going to Canada, which is not really cross-border, right? And then if you compare that to Europe, that number is about 35%. So just looking at that difference, I think there's huge opportunity, not just about how much Asian consumers or consumers in developing countries are purchasing Western goods, but also about the opportunity of American brands from their own perspective about how much they can do from their existing infrastructure to scale globally. Historically, if a merchant in the United States is wanting to sell to places like India or China, they actually don't have a lot of options. Probably want to set up a local entity, go through the entire process, become an Indian or becoming a Chinese entity. That obviously will cost millions of dollars, a lot of upfront costs, a lot of that risk components involved with it. And second, they can sell through marketplace. And you went through some of the examples of some of the biggest marketplaces. Essentially, that's almost 99% of how companies in the West are selling to places like China. They have to get on board with Tmall or JD.com or Taobao. Not a lot of companies wanting to do that, but they are left with no option. So I think the question really is like if is it possible for brands to sell directly without leveraging third party, without leveraging marketplaces, because when they are selling on marketplace, obviously that they are losing the engagement or the connectivity with their end consumer, right? So I think that alternative, and we want to provide that alternative. Obviously, like you mentioned, is about where the consumers are. If the consumers are using WhatsApp for both, like for texting, for e-commerce, for purchasing, for peer-to-peer transfer, why not just bring your e-commerce storefront over there into an environment where your consumer find most comfortable purchasing? Same thing in China, like I alluded to earlier, 25% of that e-commerce over there, which is the same size as the US e-commerce market size, is happening within the super app, within the social media platforms. So I think that the answer to that is how do we build a solution to address going direct to consumers within the consumer's most preferred platform.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to talk in the next few slides is about the opportunity. So let's talk about the trending topic, the metaverse. So I'll let you lead with this and then I'll chip in.
I mean, I think everyone has a different definitions about what metaverse is. I can give my definition. I think metaverse is a place where people engage, where people discover things. But ultimately, I think it's not as important to define what a metaverse is. I think it's about how, and it's about who we are talking about. Right? Essentially, this is talking about opportunity, talking about e-commerce. So how can an e-commerce company, how can a retailer leverage this metaverse trend to grow their business, right? So when it comes to how are people interacting with the metaverse? And there are multiple types of metaverse. We can, dive in deeper in the following slides. And, at the end of the day, it's about capturing that, user attention. So who becomes extremely important. I think, Reheen, if you can go to the following slide. Overall, the sentiments about metaverse and the willingness of consumers or users in Asia are, a lot higher compared to, Western world, because, they are the biggest gaming user, and they are the biggest, young demographic who want to engage with new things, interesting things when they just come out. So they interact quite heavily within their environment. And when it comes to, giving that definition, I think, we are already within the metaverse, even though, even this Zoom call that we are having right now, it is a part of the metaverse. It is, a metaverse that we are engaging. So, imagine, if a merchant or if a brand can target this metaverse that we are, in right now, say, it's the things that we are, talk about, things that we are potentially be interested to purchase. This is a place where we bring a lot of opportunity for brands to directly engage with. This is again interesting.
Okay,
maybe
we'll talk about this one. I think this is the interesting space.
I mean, Reheen, you are currently at Australia. I mean, from your perspective, is metaverse, being talked about a lot? Is a lot of things are being done?
I think yes. So recently I joined an event which was in the metaverse. So it was interesting not to do a Zoom call, but actually be an avatar and walk into a conference where we actually were in the metaverse and we were talking to people, but instead of me being there physically, I was there virtually, which was a very interesting thing to look at. And I think more and more people are getting into it. And especially, I think at the most top prevalent thing that comes to mind is Facebook has changed its name to Meta because that's the belief in it. And even, reading other things like just the news that came out yesterday was Accenture is now hired 150,000 people, and they're all going to get their first day training on a metaverse. They're not going to actually be in a physical office. So I think there is a lot more scope. As a brand, I think the next slide will talk a lot about on how metaverse could be actually used. So if you think about something like a Wendy's and Coca-Cola, like Coca-Cola has launched a whole new flavor, which is only available in the metaverse. And it has been embedded with the game of Fortnite. So there's a huge opportunity out there, especially if you want to target people who are very interested in something that's new and trending and they want to grab the opportunity as a brand, you have to be in there. So I think Wendy's has done it really well where, you could go in and join into the restaurant. I think they were also giving you coupons, which then you could transact in the real world. So in terms of opportunities, it's just an extension. I think metaverse has existed for a long time, but it has been more of a gaming thing. I think now it's switching from a non-gaming environment to real life examples. And I think these two companies have tried to be the first ones to make a head and tail out of it. And I think more and more companies will start to join in. The opportunities for younger and smaller businesses or even upcoming businesses would be, how do you go in there and grab people's attentions? I think you already seen companies which are selling you real estate on the metaverse and people buying it out because that that's the next frontier of where users are going to be. And I think it's all about trying to find the right users at the right place and having the right engagement with them. And I think that's where metaverse comes a lot into play.
Yeah, 100%. I was actually intrigued. This is from a few months ago at NRF. I heard that Ralph Lauren actually sold 150,000 pieces of clothing within the metaverse, right? So I think, again, to your point, this is about how retailers or brands can target that younger demographic who spend most of the time, in game, who spend most of the time wearing their VR headsets. They are not going out and shopping. They are not going out to the streets. They are not going out. At least it's not as much as their parents are going out to the streets, to the retail locations, right? So I think this is about marketing. How do we enable brands and retailers to establish a connection with whoever's within the metaverse. Now the population could be small hundreds of millions if you count in the gaming users, but definitely that will grow, right? It's a true borderless platform where users globally can join in. So not having limitations from physical, distance and physical environment and things like that. And it could actually be quite fun, right? Now that VR headsets are a lot more, real compared to what it looked like 5 years ago. So there's definitely a huge opportunity, and there are a lot of ways that companies can establish their connections with your prospect or new consumer base via metaverse.
Yeah, so let's just move on to the next highlights around gaming. So gaming is something, again, I'll let you talk about it. You know it way better than I do. You're more of a gamer.
Yeah, so I think when we are looking at gaming, actually, I just came across with this article earlier. The co-founder of Twitch now just got funding from Andreessen to start off a gaming company in the metaverse Web3 environment. So I think that's definitely also attracting quite a lot of VC capital attentions. VC are looking to pouring in money into the gaming space, especially the gaming / a Web3 environment or metaverse, right? So I think this is already a huge space, and then it's the closest thing that human have as a metaverse, right? My 8-year-old daughter spent a lot of time within Roblox, right? And then she's a more immense metaverse user compared to I am, right? So essentially, gaming, I think when you connect gaming with the metaverse and you connect both of them with retail, I think one thing to look at is there's all of that future prospect consumers that a brand can interact with, right? Before they would be as recognizing a brand, right? Say a fashion brand. I mean, this is the whole reason why Ralph Lauren want to get into the gaming space and sell their clothing over there, because when those younger users growing up, they are gonna be accustomed to however styles and they are coming across within the game. So if they see more of the brand, they develop a deeper connection with the brand, and they can either purchase within the metaverse, in game, or when they see something in brick and mortar environment, they're likely to purchase that. So I think this is targeting a gaming user, and historically, obviously, this has been a lot of the younger demographics.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. I think it's all about the younger people now. Yeah, I think let's talk about shopping. What can you actually make? I think you already gave a brief outline, but what else can be done?
I think honestly now is pure marketing, right? Everything can be done within the metaverse. Shopping, I think, I think that the one companies who are selling better in the metaverse are the ones who are better at creating those contents. The contents that resonate more with younger demographics, with the gaming users, with everyone who's currently within the metaverse. It's a community thing, right? If you just want to, all of a sudden, I want to sell sneakers in the metaverse, that just won't happen without a community, right? I think Nike or Adidas earlier, they sold tons of their sneakers, not because they are selling sneakers, but actually because they have a huge community in the metaverse, in gaming, who are looking to do more with that brand, who want to associate more with that brand, because for the first time they get to attach a brand that they wear in real life with something that they interact with, probably 80% of their spare time. So I think selling in metaverse won't just happen without heavy content that's curated to create a community of a follower base. So I think everything could happen, but I think that the catalyst should be a community and also content.
Yeah. So essentially what we're talking about the metaverse is it's not just about, just shopping or playing games. It's also about what else can be done about it. You could essentially build out a whole mall in there. We could do 3D fitting. You could do a beauty consultation. You could have, people coming in to experience what they do in the real life, in the virtual world. And you could do it in any part of the world, and you could join people from other parts of the world and actually have that chat. And I think for brands, it's having that ability to engage with their audience in a new way, but also the ability to actually have that data to really understand who are they going after and what's been their behavior online. So I think there's a lot more opportunity. So I'll talk about transacting in the metaverse. I think this is where Pockyt comes in, and I'll let Mason talk a lot more about this, because this is where Pockyt really has its strengths.
Thank you, Reheen. So I think it's about the consumer. I think transacting for the first time is about consumer. Historically, I as a merchant, or you as a merchant, as a brand, when you are opening up your door to sell to the consumer, it's always about having consumer to step into your store or to visit your website. That obviously will still happen. People will still discover new things, when they are shopping around at a mall, when they'll be, browsing around, websites and things like that. That's where they can discover things. But I think what's more important and what's super relevant to our conversations over here is to recognize there are a huge amount of users right now, in billions, are discovering, the product that they like, the brands that they want to try with, in the metaverse or in the super app that we alluded to earlier. Say for instance, consumers in China, consumers in India, they don't have cards, right? So when we talk about transaction, if you are forcing your consumers over there to use card transaction, that dropout rate could almost be as high as 70%. So I think it's for the first time, about consumer, how they want to transact, when they discover things, and you want to enable the checkout to happen at that point of discovery. So this is what where we come in. We enable consumers to check out anywhere at their point of discovery. They can discover a brand, they can discover something that they like in store, on e-commerce. Good, we can enable our payments extension to be installed on that e-commerce site and also in store, and completing that transaction, saving cross-border fees, saving transaction fees, at the same time enabling the younger demographic to transact in a way that they prefer. I think what's more exciting is that we can also enable brands to offer their checkout, or essentially launch brands into an environment where the consumers live within, like super app. So now today, I know Reheen, you can talk about that in the following slide, where mini programs will become relevant. So transacting within metaverse will still be relatively similar to how consumers are purchasing within their super app through mini programs. So I think at the end of the day, it's about how as business that you can enable a better shopping experience and a closer, lesser with a lot less steps that your consumer had to go through. If you compare that with an e-com, yes, they can discover things separately at a social media platform, but they have to go through a lot of steps to actually be able to check out, given that they also don't have credit cards. So I think really, when it comes to transacting, I think it's going to be about how do you enable checkout at the consumer's point of discovery, wherever they are at that time.
Yeah, I think that ease of payment is critical. So let's talk about where do they interject, and then we'll talk about the super apps. So, we already have seen that, if you look at an Alipay like an app which already is a super app and allows you to do everything. I think this is where it comes down to the fact that you could have an app which would then take you further in and connect to the metaverse. And it's not there yet completely, it's still being built out. But the advantage is that if you look at a platform like an Alipay or WeChat, um, everything could be done within the app. And I think as we talk into the next section, we'll talk more about some of the super apps and what they can do. But essentially what happens is that you as a user don't need to go to 20 different places so that you could do something. It's all within one app. Like, I think the next slide that we have around super apps is going to simplify things. Like, just showing you an example, like if you look on the left, you have so many things that need to be, you have so many apps on your phone. I think on an average now everybody has like 100 apps, but it's not about taking up space or anything like that. It's just about the experience. Like, if I want to order food, I want to go into this app. If I want to buy I book a hotel, then I need to go somewhere else. If I want to watch YouTube, then I want to go somewhere else. If I want to talk to people, then I need to go to WhatsApp, or I need to go to Facebook Messenger, or I need to go to any other app that I choose. And it's just like me being in so many places and then having a profile in each of them, then remembering that profile, what is the username, password, what is it connected to, updating those apps. But the thing that has happened is, and not just in China, but also across Asia, has been the super app. So one app which allows you to do everything, everything that you would think of. Like, if at the most basic level, it allows you to communicate with your friends. It allows you to post what are you thinking about. Like, you have a feed kind of a feature, but then you also have the ability to transact, to interact, and to also to do booking services. So I think that's where there's been a lot of transition that's coming in. And not just talking about China per se, but if you think about it in other markets, especially if you think about Grab, which is hugely popular in the Southeast Asian region, starting off from Singapore, it's big. And then you have Gojek, which is from Indonesia, which allows you to do everything from, hey, I want to travel from point A to point B, you could use them. So it takes over your Uber, but then you also have food delivery within it, which takes care of your Uber Eats or Deliveroo. And then it has parcel delivery, it has grocery delivery, it has an e-wallet. You could buy out movie tickets, you could watch content. And the same thing happens in India with Paytm. I mean, Paytm came in backed by Alibaba into India, and it has taken that time to explode. But now it's not just Paytm, there are other players who've come into the market who are trying. So what everybody's trying to do is grab the user's attention. And it's not just like has to be in major economies and growing economies. Like, even in Bangladesh, you have these apps which are now catering to that younger demographic, because everybody has a mobile phone. There's been a whole generation shift, especially in the older generation. We're talking about like people from the age of 50 plus. A lot of them have never used a computer. They have just jumped straight into a mobile phone, and that mobile phone, they want it to be easy, they want it to be quick. So, they get this opportunity to use this app, which allows them to do everything. So I think that's where more and more things are happening. And if you want to compare, like, let's say, especially going back into the China space, one app which could do everything for you. You could do your messaging, you could have an wallet, e-commerce, you have food, you have car sharing, bike sharing, you can do invoices. In fact, in China right now, anywhere, because of the whole COVID situation, anywhere you want to go, you need to scan your QR code. You have a WeChat mini program and an Alipay mini program, which we'll talk about at the end. Essentially what it does is it allows you to go anywhere without actually having to showcase any sort of a card. You literally have a green tick, an orange tick, and a red tick, and that is all determined by who you are, where you are, and it allows you to have that interaction. So I think there's a huge thing that is happening with super apps, and this is what we really wanted to talk about, the explosion of super apps across Asia. So of course you have the big beast between India and China, but then you also have Japan, where if you think about it, everybody thinks, oh, we're in Japan, let's just use Google, or let's just use Facebook. But the reality is a lot of conversations in Japan actually happen online, which commands almost like 66% of the people out there. So 80 million people are online. And then you have you have Korea, where everybody uses KakaoTalk. Of course, you still have your Facebook Messenger, you have your WhatsApp, but a lot of conversations happen on KakaoTalk. If you go into Thailand and Taiwan, you still have Line, which is the dominant one. But then in all these other markets, WhatsApp has had an incredible growth, and WhatsApp for businesses started to grow really well. So it's gone from mere one-on-one communication or being in a group chat to actually for businesses being able to do it. And then there's an interesting one with Vietnam, with the Zalo app. So I think as we look more and more into this, we're seeing that these apps are commanding people's attention, but they're allowing them the ability to do everything within that app. And what this has done is twofold. One is a lot of people don't need to think about like, hey, if I want to talk to somebody, I need to FaceTime them. I could essentially use any of these apps to do that FaceTiming. I could also use this app, which has a very similar experience across an iOS and an Android device. And it allows them to not worry that I can't connect or communicate with somebody. So in terms of penetration wise, it is immensely growing. And I think there is a lot more. Like, I think even with the WeChat, which is, I think, by far the best super app in the world, it has almost 1.2 billion users. And if you compare that to Facebook, which is on a decline, Facebook has essentially 4 different apps. You have the Facebook, you have the Instagram, you have the Messenger, and then the WhatsApp. But they all don't work seamlessly well to each other. Like, of course, you can have your Facebook connect to your Instagram and Messenger, but it doesn't connect to your WhatsApp. So WhatsApp is predominantly with your mobile number. Versus with WeChat, it's essentially one app which controls everything. And not only that, the beauty of this app is if you want to do a social login, you can do it through WeChat. So a lot of Chinese websites and even platforms like, other social media platforms like Weibo and Little Red Book or Xiaohongshu, they allow you to log in with WeChat, which means that it's embedded in your life. No matter where you go, you just need that app. You cannot live without it because everybody is in that space. What do you think about it, Mason?
Yeah, I think, again, I think for the first time, when merchants in the West, if they are considering selling to the East, this is the channel that everyone has to get on, right? Besides marketplace, which is not really something that resonate with a lot of that digital native brands. So commerce through super app or social commerce will be the one D2C channel that everyone can leverage. And like you mentioned, some of that super app may already have established really good infrastructure for shopping, for payments, and for everything. So it's really well built and ready to sell.
Yeah. And coming towards, we already spoke about this, like in China, it's not just one app. So of course you have the big beast like WeChat Pay and Alipay, but then you do have the other ones also, which are growing. And I think there is an opportunity for brands to think about, hey, how do I get in front of more people using these apps? And if we talk about India, I think, again, there, of course, you have the likes of Amazon, but the new entrant has been Tata. So Tata, of course, it's been a company for 150 years, highly trusted, and everybody uses it. But now it's just launched its own super app called Tata Neu. And what it does is anything that you do on any other Tata app is all embedded into one now. So you don't really need to jump in to do too many things. And then, of course, you have the newest entrant, which is Reliance Jio, which changed the entire landscape in the Indian market, because in India now you get the internet, which is the cheapest in the world. Nowhere else do you get internet to be so cheap. And they allow you to do everything. And the Jio app has essentially brought in a lot more people to jump online because the prices have dropped that much dramatically. So it's not just the handset that is cheap, but the internet is also cheap. Yeah. I mean, you could get internet for as low as like $1 in some places, and you are not getting like 1 gig or 2 gigs. Like, you're getting a huge amount of data that is available to you. And even the government now in a lot of places offers you free Wi-Fi. So there are lots of people who just have their phone with them, and it allows them to have all that interaction, and it gives them the ability to do everything within it. So whether it being playing a game, whether it being, watching something on an OTT platform, making a payment, doing a transaction, talking to their friends, everything just happens within one environment. So when you look at all of these apps versus when you look at Facebook, it just allows you essentially to just communicate and talk and a little bit of e-commerce, but it doesn't really have that strong transaction ability. People are not jumping in and saying, oh, wow, Facebook can do everything for me. The answer is no, it can't do everything for you. It cannot allow you to book a ticket. It cannot allow you to manage your investments. It cannot allow you to order your food delivery. It just has become a channel of communication. It's no longer a channel which allows you to transact on each and every element of your life. So I think that's where the opportunity lies. So we've pretty much spoken about, and we're coming to the last few minutes, so we'll just wrap it up very quickly. Essentially, what is a mini program? So the easiest way to think about it is, and what we've been talking across these super apps is, right now, if you think about it in the US or even in Europe, a lot of clients think about, let me build out an iOS and an Android application because it's an extension of my website, of my digital presence, so that I can manage people. But what the mini app does is you essentially build out an app within one of these interfaces. So you don't need to build out an iOS version or an Android version or a web version. You've essentially embedded all the features of that in this super app. And because it's a mini application, it's light, the users can interact with it much faster without leaving the main application. And you can also be able to transact, and you can also do notifications right from the most basic about payments to all the way up to delivery notifications, plus real-time notifications, plus user engagement, all of that through the app. And what it does for businesses is the advantage that you're able to tap and harness into all these super apps, number of users that they have. But the other advantage is you don't need to maintain two different systems. One is an iOS, one is an Android, and then one which is a web version. So you can have just one version and it works very seamlessly across all of them. And you still have the same user data. You still build out your loyalty. You still have your marketing capabilities. You still provide a whole range of things for you, but you're also leading it because you are a brand who's already present in there, rather than being a brand who joins in after 20 of your competitors are already in the marketplace. So with this, we just are pretty much at the end. So just a quick rundown on who we are. So essentially, I'm the founder of Digital Crew. What we do is we help brands, especially from North America and Europe and the APAC region, to penetrate into the Asian markets. So everything from building on mini programs to getting into super apps to doing marketing in the metaverse, we help you to do all of that. And we have fairly good presence across the APAC region, right from China to Australia to Japan to Mumbai. So we cover all of that. And then, of course, we do have a presence up in New York, as well as a presence in the EU region, which allows us to communicate with our clientele. So that's what we come in and we help with. And then just the last one coming in is around Pockyt. So I'll just let Mason talk, and then we'll jump into Q&As.
Yeah, thank you, Reheen. We are an universal payments API ready to use on all of the major e-commerce platforms like Salesforce, Shopify, Magento, and all that. Essentially, what this does is enable you to connect directly with consumers who prefer to pay with their mobile wallet to super app.
Cool. So we'll just jump straight into the Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, you can either post it on chat, or we can just turn on your speakers and your mic, and we can have that questions from you.